let's talk about the under-21s, the youngsters coming through at the moment, because everyone saw the cup final on the weekend, Liverpool bringing on all those kids and beating them billionaire bottle jobs that were Chelsea and Pochettino on the weekend. That brought a smile to all our faces. But let's start off with you, Jacob. Do you feel like these youngsters need to be given more of a chance? And why haven't they been given more of a chance when we had all those injuries?
You know, it's an interesting discussion because I remember when Jose was here, I was questioning those very same things. Why aren't we seeing some of these kids? And to me, I could see it both ways for Ange Postecoglou being like, can I trust my job? This is the audition period, right? This is when we're all seeing what's he made of? What's he going to do? What are we looking like? And then, now he's like, well, let me bring these kids up. I started getting excited in the beginning of the season, seeing the Donleys, the Dorringtons on the bench. Iago Santiago was on the bench once. And I'm like, okay, because I subscribe to Spurs play. I'll admit it. I subscribe to Spurs play, and I watch the academy matches. But it's very much worth the dollar because to watch the youth is something I've been crying out for. Like, I wish we could watch the youth games, and now they're actually providing that for us. So, of course, I'm going to take advantage of it. And so it's very exciting to see these kids coming through. But for me, it now looking back and it was a little bit more retrospection, I think that it was more he put those kids on the bench because we needed numbers first and foremost. We were facing injuries, suspensions, tournaments, etc., and we needed bodies. We needed warm bodies who could fill the bench. And there's a reason why they weren't subbed on. And if they were subbed on, I think Donnelly got subbed on once or twice for a handful of minutes. That's just a little disheartening from a U21 side, but this has been a bigger problem than just this year. The pathway from the youth team to the first team has been broken for quite some time, and you just get the occasional here's a skip, here's an all of Harry Winks and now Harry Kane and so you get that, and that kind of makes the academy believe, well, I could do it if I'm good enough or if I do the right things. But again, to me, I just think that it's a little disheartening when there's not that many opportunities handed out for these kids who've clearly been working hard. I don't know right now the table fixtures, but for a good part of the season, our U21s were top of their league, our U18s were top of their league, and our U17s were top of their league. So to me, that just speaks to, first of all, their level, or their talent at their level. But do we know that they could take that drastic step up to the Premier League? Do we know they can make that drastic step up to a championship? These are questions we don't know. And we're starting to find out. It does look like Alfie Devine could fit in just fine in the championship. He's getting assists. He's getting goals. Ashley Phillips, the new manager over there, he's loving on him. I know that he knows Alfie Devine from his previous managerial position at the England U-somethings. And so for me, it's taken a while, but Alfie Devine is getting his chance. So maybe next year he could potentially infiltrate this 25. I mean, I would love to see something like that, because then it breeds confidence with the younger kids that I just try a little harder, I push a little harder, take a loan somewhere. You never know where I may end up. And for me, I also, like, Dane Scarlett was that one hopeful that we've been hoping on for about 3-4 years. Jose said, oh, he's a star boy, love Dane Scarlett. Conte, same thing. Everyone says they love Dane Scarlett, but when push comes to shove, Dane Scarlett's not even getting minutes on his loans. And when he did last year do well for Portsmouth, it was like for a moment in the beginning, and then it just kind of fell off. So for me, I don't necessarily blame Dane Scarlett for that, because he's been here, he's been there. Then you just kind of playing with the young man's emotions and what he thinks his life is going to end up. And, these kids are all humans too, and they're growing young men. And I understand what it's like to be that age, not in their position, obviously, but to be at that stage where you're like, where am I going to go? Where am I going to play? Like, who really believes in me, and who trusts in me enough to make me believe in myself? Kind of like with what Kish was saying. Basuma is one of those guys that thrives on putting an arm around you, say, you're my guy, go get this. Because to me, we weren't having that 6s and 8s conversation in the beginning of the season. So I think it's going to take Ainge a little bit putting his arm around these kids and saying, like, he believes in them. But again, do you want to hinge your probationary period, let's say, on your tenure at your new club, at the biggest venue that you've ever managed at, the highest level you've ever managed at? You're going to risk it on some kids? I don't know. Not yet, anyway, is what I would say if I'm H. Postecoglou. So I think that's something that will be worked out over time. We're still figuring out the hierarchy of our recruitment in the academy, et cetera. We're buying up all this young talent. Now we got to see what we can do with it. Jude Soonsup-Bell, another name that comes to mind, bought him off Chelsea. Let's see. Let's start seeing some of this. And the more competitions we're in, i.e., European football next year, the more we're going to see some of these things. So I'm not too worried about it right now.
You say like the pathway's been broken for a number of years. When it wasn't broken, it was Alex Inglethorpe that was running the academy at the time, and now he's the one running the academy at Liverpool. So it's no surprise to me that you're seeing these kind of players like filter through at Liverpool. But it did take a ginormous injury crisis at Liverpool to see these players come through. So it was a bit disheartening maybe not to see these players when we had that kind of major injury crisis halfway through the season, when you're looking at the under-21s, top of their league, undefeated this season. The under-18s are third in their league, 3 points off the top. Where do you sit with it, Sim? Do you feel like we should have by now seen more of these players?
I think definitely, as you said, like when we had the injury crisis, you know, we're playing Emerson and Davis as centre-back. At that stage, that was disappointing not to have at least seen Phillips given a go for, you know, just try him out, see how he does, put him
Especially
in.
As they said, he was brought in to be part of the first team.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to be playing Emerson and Davis, look, to be fair, Davis did all right, but if you're going to be playing Emerson there, who I don't think played very well when he was a centre-back by and large, in my opinion, why not give Ashley Phillips a run out just to give him a go to see how he does and see if he can kind of sink or swim? And if he sinks, then yeah, you could argue he can kill his confidence. But if it's only one game, then you realise, okay, he's not ready. You can put him back. You can take him on loan and do what you're doing now. But if he swims and, you know, he does really well, all of a sudden that's another option there. And also you're giving him confidence. You're giving him opportunities to develop his game, get used to the Premier League early as well. And obviously right now we're seeing him on loan at Plymouth. The reports are very, very strong. Apparently he's doing really well. So I think on those elements, that was disappointed we didn't see him. Same with like Donnelly. Like I think there were some games. I think Lo Celso and Maddison were both injured, and I think on those occasions it would have been nice just for one game, maybe against a team who will sit a low block or whatever. Put Donnelly in, see how he does.
Start or bring him on, give him more minutes.
I think start him, and I'd take him off if it's not working. But if we there were some games where we were playing like Basuma, Højbjerg and Sarr all together, which lacked any sort of creativity or any sort of attacking. I guess we had Kulusevski there as well, so we put him central. But maybe in those occasions where we saw Kulusevski more as a right winger, you can put Donnelly in from the start just to give him a game, see what he does. But I understand what Andrew's point of view is, and also in a weird way, to Jacob's point, if he puts Emerson and Davis there or whatever, it actually gives him more leeway in a weird way, because if he says I think Phillips is ready and puts him in and he has a bad game and it costs us a result, or like the finger would point more at Ange for that, because you technically have a player who's ready to play, fit your system because you've picked him. Whereas if you put Emerson there and it goes wrong, you just say, well, I had no other option because Emerson was the only fit centre-back and I don't think Ashley Phillips is ready. So it kind of, in a way, gives him more excuse.
Bit of a safety net, you reckon?
In a way. I don't know if that's why he did it, but if you logically think about it, it gives him a bit more leeway to do that. I think it takes the... you can't really criticise him too much. If he's going to say Phillips is not ready and then you puts Emerson there and it goes wrong, he doesn't really have an excuse. Where if he puts Phillips in there and it goes wrong, like that's a recognised centre back and maybe the eye will be more on him.
But why not play Phillips if Ange is the one that said he's come in to be a part of the first team when we signed him in the summer?
That's what I'm saying. I would have liked to have seen him, but maybe that's part of the reason. I don't think it is. I don't think that's what he's thinking. But I'm just saying maybe subconsciously that could be part of it as well. And maybe he's not ready. Go on, Jacob. What are you going to say?
I wanted to throw something in there because remember, my first question when we're talking about bringing a kid in is who's leaving off of the 11, and even if it is the Davies and Emerson. To me, in the locker room, what kind of message does that send? He kind of did it with Eric Dyer, and look at the pushback he got in the press. Look at the pushback, and that almost had a ripple effect. So I'm wondering if this happening after the whole Eric Dyer "don't question my integrity" thing, if that could possibly play a factor in ways like, well, I don't want to throw Emerson and Davies under the bus and then get questioned again. And then if, say, Ashley Phillips isn't working and is horrible in, say, 1-2 matches, everyone's going to look at me as like, oh, well, you icing out a veteran who clearly could play that. To me, I think that's obviously a grand assumption on my part, but I'm just throwing out there, maybe with the Eric Dyer thing happening and the kind of pushback he had from that, it could have altered the way he went forward with these youth kids.
I don't. Go on, Kish. Go on, Kish.
I just think that's a huge point, because I think Ange has talked a lot about kind of squad dynamics and how the feeling around the club, and I think I'm starting to think that this first season is about him kind of sending a message that if you work hard, everyone's going to get a go and everyone's going to be able to impress me. And then he's going to start trimming his squad from what he's seen. But I think to send a message basically to the first team squad and say, if you work hard in training, if you're performing in training, then you're going to get a chance. And I think Skip, Emerson and Davies probably, unfortunately,
they all work hard. Yeah,
they're hard workers, and so he's rewarding them in that, and I think that kind of spreads the message. But I also think, in terms of bringing through academy players, I think it's always about kind of having an individual development plan for all of them. So let's say kind of Donnelly, right now he's got Madison in front of him, he's got Lo Celso in front of him. I think he needs to be, or there needs to be kind of a plan that, okay, when Donnelly's, let's say 21, he's going to be understudy to Madison, and by 23 we want him to be kind of the main number 10 or whatever, right? And that's obviously if all goes to plan. And I think right now the squad's so bloated and there's so many players that don't quite fit, or kind of we don't really know where they fit, and it's stopping those young players coming through. And I think the club need to start offloading players, cut their losses with players, and then we'll start seeing kind of the fruits of the academy, because I do think that the squad's too big right now, and to kind of leapfrog kind of a starting level player who's maybe Lo Celso, for example, he's played World Cups, he's like Argentina's first midfielder, to play Donnelly over him, what kind of message does that send to him? What kind of message does that send to everyone else? I do think Donnelly was ready this season, and I think he is ready now to play Premier League minutes. I've thought that, I've watched a lot of him, and I think that physically, mentally, and technically, he ticks all those boxes. With the Phillips one, I don't think he's ready to play the system. I think he really struggles in possession still. And I think he's quite stiff in terms of turning. So our system's very kind of big on defending the wide channels as a centre back, and also building up, playing kind of out from the back. So I think he's got developing to do, but I don't think that's a problem. But I think there are players who could make an impact, a positive impact now. But I think it's the bloated squad issue. I think the other two who could make an impact now are Santiago. I think we're missing that profile. I don't think he's necessarily a world beater, but I think what he does have is something we're missing in the squad, and that's 1v1 ability to take on his fullback, and we know our wingers really struggle with that. And the other one who's kind of making huge waves is Tyrese Hall, who's a kind of number 6/8, and I think he could play both pretty well, exceptionally well, and I think at number 6 he'd be better than the current options, but I don't imagine that happening because he's only just come up from the 18s. But those are the kind of three that I think could make a first team impact currently, and that doesn't mean they're the best talents. I just think they're the ones that fit currently in the current squad setup. So yeah,
looking forward to next season, Kish. Like you said, there needs to be a pathway, like there needs to be a plan for these players, but it's always very tempting to get your checkbook out and always sign a player rather than look to bring in a player, develop your player in your academy and kind of give them a chance. In your opinion, like going into next season, if let's say we can trim the squad, there's always talk of we need to bring a midfielder in. There's a lot of talk of us bringing a fourth centre back. For you, or even a winger, like maybe a young winger on top of a winger we pay a lot of money for. For you, would you rather maybe give Divine that opportunity to be involved in the squad rather than sign another midfielder? Maybe give Santiago a chance on the wing. Maybe give Phillips a chance to be one of our first choice centre backs. Or do you still think, should we be in the mentality of if we got a problem, we have to spend our way out of it?
So I think it's a case by case situation. So there's certain players who whose potential I think is massive, and there's certain players that might be getting a bit of hype on kind of social media and stuff because of what they're doing in the 21s, but I don't see it translating because of their skill set and their kind of judgments that the staff have to make. I think there's certain players who have huge potential, but then again, the percentage of players that can make it as a top 6 Premier League level player is so small. Like it's like maybe there's 10 wingers in the world that improve our starting 11 right now, for example, or maybe a bit more. But you know what I mean? It's so small, and for that to come from your academy, the chances are always so small. I do think our academy is in its best moment as it's been for a long time right now. But I think again, it's a case by case basis. I don't think we have a winger currently at the club who takes us up the level that we need to go in terms of that position. But I think Devine or Donnelly could be a very good understudy to Maddison. So I think it's a case by case thing. Bergvall as well, who looks incredible. I think he's probably the best of the lot. So he's another one. But with the centre backs, I don't think either of them are ready. I think Dorrington is probably, in my eyes, the highest ceiling player. But again, at 18, centre backs don't really start their first team top level career until maybe 22, 23. So that's a 5-year waiting period. And I think especially with those centre backs, we've got to be patient, really.
Yeah, I completely
To
agree.
me, I just get a little bit.
Go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, like, I get a little jealous. Does anyone else get a little jealous when you see Kobe Mainoo, 18 years old?
I was just about to mention that.
To me, I get jealous. I mean, I know Harvey Elliott isn't a world beater, but he's been a consistent first teamer at the age of 18, 19.
I think these guys
can be done.
These guys are the cream of the crop English talents and have been since a young age. They've been talked about since they were 15, 16, especially Kobe Mainoo. He's been like, United fans have known about him for a long time. So those kind of guys, they're generational type mid players in terms of at a young age, and they're always going to be fast tracked. And I think we have one of those in Mikey Moore, who's much younger, but it's going to take time with those guys. And then there's some who kind of surprise you, and I think Harry Kane was an example of that, who kind of took everyone by surprise. So it's different for every player, I guess.
Yeah, I completely. You look at Connor Bradley as well. What he's doing in a Liverpool shirt right back, he looks completely at home in the Premier League, doesn't he? What a player he looks like. So there are a lot of players. You look at Bukayo Saka, he broke into the team at 16.
Yeah, it's true, but Andrew's quite clear, wasn't he? He said in the press conference, our academy is not there yet. And maybe he was making an indication that as much as we're all like wowing over their performances and results on 21s, maybe it's not an indication yet that they're of the standard to actually play for our first team compared to maybe some of the other academies. I don't know. It's hard for us to hear that because you're seeing them and you're thinking, wow, why can't they be involved? But Ange is seeing them on the training ground, that he's saying he doesn't think our academies are compared to a lot of the other top clubs. He thinks it's not the same level.
But I do agree with Jacob what he said. Like, once we're in European football next year, particularly if we maybe qualify for the Europa League, you will be seeing these players more, and I think it will become more clear to us if these guys are ready or not. And it's hard to throw them in straight away in a Premier League game if you don't think or if you don't know if they're ready yet, because we need to get results. We need to get results now to achieve our goals for this season. So it is difficult. It's frustrating at the same time when you're seeing around the Premier League 18-year-olds and kids from the academy in various different clubs coming in and doing the business straight away. But that doesn't mean to say that these Spurs boys will come in and do the business straight away as well. So it is a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.